All right. How would you describe yourself and your culture?
My culture, my family is Mexican. Actually, my parents and four of my six siblings were born in Mexico. We moved here in the 90s. Everyone was lucky enough to be able to get their papers. So my entire family are all U.S. citizens, except for my mom is a legal resident. And yeah, I grew up in Southern California. I lived there until I was 6. Most of my family also lived there. We ended up moving to Dallas because the cost of living in California was just too high. We were renting a house, and for the amount we would rent a house, it was like a 2-bedroom, 1-story house. We could buy 3-bedroom, 2-story here in Dallas. So we did that. We moved here. 2 of my siblings who were already in college stayed in California, and then 2 of my other siblings who were over 18 but didn't go to college moved to Dallas before all the rest of us did. To supervise the building of the house and everything. They started everything. They lived there together, and then the rest of us moved over. And so then, yeah. So my parents are. My Spanish is not as good as it could be, but I do speak it at home. Everyone does. We used to go to Mexico every year or so.
What are some events that, not events, holidays that are really important in Mexico?
In Mexico, the other one was the Day of the Dead, definitely. Easter is really big, obviously, because a lot of Mexicans are Catholic, so like the really religious ones. Easter, the Semana Santa, the Holy Week is really big there. That's pretty much it. My parents actually don't celebrate Day of the Dead.
Why not?
They're more strictly Catholic, less cultural, and that Day of the Dead is a lot more cultural. I think my grandma does celebrate it, but she spends the day praying instead of doing at the cemetery and all that.
Okay. That's pretty cool. What is it like for you how is it like for you to, that makes no sense. How is it like for you growing up here in Mexico? Do you remember that?
I was born in Southern California.
Ah.
So I'm a naturalized citizen, but 4 of my siblings were born in Mexico, and then me and my 2 older sisters were born here in California. In the town that I grew up in, it was a really small town. It was called Santa Paula. It had 20,000 people, and it was almost entirely Latino, entirely Mexican specifically. So I actually had never met a black person until I moved to Dallas. A black person or a white person, everyone was Mexican in my town. That's like what I was exposed to. So then moving to Dallas was like a huge shift because obviously in my hometown I was a majority, and then I was switched to being a minority.
Okay.
And it was, especially in Dallas, there's like, at least in my elementary school, it was majority white kids with a few Mexican or Hispanic and white kids. So that was definitely like, kind of like, I didn't realize it at first, but it was a bit of like a culture shock. It was jarring.
I figure.
So.
Regarding that, how do you feel about, well, I feel like in today's time, it's kind of hard to, everybody wants to put a label on everything, you feel me? Either you're Mexican, Hispanic, or Chicana, or all the other ones, Latino, and other stuff like that. Well, how would you describe yourself?
I'm Latino, but I'm also Chicano. Chicano is people who are just, who are Hispanic, but they're born here in the States. So it's not kind of like second generation.
Okay.
So I would be a Chicano, and then I'm Latino because it's Latin America, and then also Hispanic. I think it's all just kind of synonymous, but there's different degrees of specificity.
Yeah.
So I usually just say I'm Latino, because since coming here, specifically in Denton, there's not as many Mexicans as there were in Dallas. It's a lot of Guatemalans. I've met a couple Colombians, Cubans.
Okay.
So it's a little more diversity here in Denton.
Regarding your location, do you feel did you get a more accepting vibe in California or in Texas?
Well,
Because I know you said that your hometown was like, mostly majority was Latino.
And then because of that, there were prejudices based on race, but there was prejudices based on like social class. So there was the higher end, because obviously if everyone is the same race, then it's based on like people who are more well off But it's a very small city. There's only, I think, 5 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, and 1 high school. So at one point or another, you're going to meet everyone if you go to high school there. So it was definitely more like, oh, like you live in this part of Santa Paula, then you're like in the hills, then like you're more well off. But we lived in the very edge of the town. Like literally, it was like our street, and then the fields were there was like avocado trees and all this. So it was more that. And then moving here, then I luckily because I look white, so I never really experienced, and I don't speak that much Spanish outside of my home, so I never really experienced that much prejudice. But I have experienced like passive racism, like it's like certain comments once people find out that I'm Mexican. So that's it. Luckily, I haven't experienced much discrimination or anything. But yeah.
I feel you. Alright, so it is in mainstream US, whatever, it is common for couples between the ages 20 and 40 to cohabitate, living together, all that stuff, but without being married.
Yeah.
How is that seen in your in your culture?
Oh, it's definitely sinful. You're living in sin. Like this is more based on religion. Well, also because Catholicism is so deeply ingrained in Mexico, it's kind of both. I think the first time it happened was one of my sisters, the second oldest sister. She ended up getting married. She got married through the state, which wasn't a church wedding, it wasn't a Catholic wedding. And so in the eyes of Catholics, it doesn't count. So then once they moved in together, then because it wasn't a real wedding, they were living in sin, they couldn't get communion in church. And it was kind of like, I was very young at this point, but from what I've been told, my siblings even, or my cousins were like very like judgmental and like just kind of saw my sister differently, especially since she got pregnant so shortly after, even in my family, especially my parents, because it was such like it's like taboo basically.
Frowned upon.
But now I have a sister who's gotten divorced, not the same one, but I have another sister who's gotten divorced, which is also taboo. And then I have another brother who also got married through state. So it's kind of become sort of normalized and there's less of a reaction from it. But it took a while.
It's like moments like that, does it like hinder like family ties?
It definitely does. We've had a degree of like strains in the relationship. My sister, the first one to get married, she was definitely very pushed away. But luckily now we've come together, because what I love about being Mexican is we have very strong family values and ties. I'm close to all my distant cousins, extended family, and everything. Like we're all very close, so that's why we were able to move past that. But I know other Hispanic families who, if something were like that to happen, it would be like a scandal, and they would like not be able to come back together. But it's pretty specific to like at least my family.
Okay. Well, you kind of spilled over to the next question. How are taboos, issues dealt with within your family? How are elderly people viewed and treated in your culture?
They're the matriarchs. My grandmother, I have both my grandparents on my dad's side, they both passed away, and then my grandfather on my mother's side passed away. So all that's really left is my grandma on my mom's side, and she's what she says goes basically. So she lives in Mexico, but she spends a good chunk of the year basically kind of visiting all of her kids. So she'll live with us for a month or two, then she'll go visit another family, live with them for a month, and then she basically just does that. And then she'll go and she'll live in her house in Mexico for like usually in the winter. So then like she's a very big presence in our lives. Everyone's always like glad to see her, but like if it's during Christmas or something and she says we're gonna pray, like it's done. Like nobody, if she says we're not gonna drink at this party, no one's gonna drink, no one's gonna do anything. Like it's what she says goes.
Dang.
So yeah.
And she doesn't have her husband passed. So she's like the iron hand.
Yeah. So like like in the movie Coco, like it really is like there's the matriarch usually. Sometimes not even like the patriarch. It's like sometimes it's just whoever's left basically to enforce. So it's her and also her sister, like the Paula, she is like the same. Like whatever any of them say, it's done.
Okay. kind of get the same sense in my family too. Well, Michael, nah.
Not the same.
Regarding like who got the power and everything, my family, we're not that much like family oriented. Like we know of each other, but we don't speak to each other unless we're coming together for a funeral or once in a while for Christmas. You feel me?
Yeah.
But we're still heavily divided. So the person who's really like the top gun right now, it would be my granny, my great grandma, and that's everybody's mom. You feel me?
Yeah.
And so
honestly.
yeah, and so she has to say over. They do seek out her opinion sometimes. You feel me? And whether it's good or not, they're like, oh yeah, she said it, so you should follow it.
Yeah. Follow her wishes.
But the family orientedness, like yeah, it's not like it's not prevalent in my family like at all. It sucks. Okay. How does your culture deal with puberty? Like, you know, physical changes in boys and girls or adolescents?
I don't know about my family. For one, I have 4 sisters. The 2 older ones, I don't really know about, but I know for sure the third, whenever she first went through puberty and she got her period, my mother was like very overbearing, was kind of like, you have to keep this a secret. She was very, very like, that's like something like sacred. And it's like, it varies in different families, I think. Like just specifically that, like especially what we've never had like any like sort of like sex talk or anything. It's just kind of like you push that away until you're married, and then you find out. I have my sister-in-law. Her mother didn't even know what happened on her wedding night. She didn't know what was going to happen at all. She had no idea. So that's her family. And luckily for mine, when my mom was kind of very overbearing, my dad came in. So my dad would be the one to buy my sister's tampons, pads, feminine products. Everything. So he would be the one to like kind of like be there for them. But my mother definitely, I think she's the more like old-fashioned. So she treated it as like something very something you don't really talk about.
Yeah. And I feel like that's pretty prevalent because Karina, how her mom handled her period, and her little sister, she did the same thing to both of them. She was like, you be quiet about it. Don't be telling people about it. Don't tell people that you're at that age yet. You feel me? It's something that's really on hush hush.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but
it's just something to do with like your purity. Again, it ties back into the Catholicism, the religion. Like it's sacred. It's like your womanhood, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
But what about for boys?
Nothing. I didn't get anything. I had to find out in middle school. Like, everybody does. So, yeah, but like, as far as my cousins, same thing. Like, it's just kind of like it's definitely a lot different from men and women, Hispanic. So like, it's for us, it's just kind of a lot more lax, a lot more. Typically, guys are favored more in families. Yeah.
Okay. What is the attitude towards gay and lesbian individuals in your culture?
Not good.
No.
No. I think that's probably the one thing that obviously like the parents in our families, my aunts, uncles, and all them, they probably would not budge. Like definitely not. I have a sister who is engaged to a white guy. And even that was very like, everyone tried to talk her out of it. He met my grandma, and she prayed for them to break up. She was very like, it's not good, especially like, and that's him being white. That's probably the only reason that it was like fine. I have a cousin who's dating a black guy, and her mom, like they did not take it well at all. And so imagine, obviously, and that's not even like prohibited in the Bible.
Oh my God. And
LGBTQ is so. Definitely my cousins who grew up here in the States, obviously almost all of us were born here in the States, and grew up like in American culture. We're a lot more open and like liberal, less religious sort of. So most of like the younger generation, obviously the ones who were born here, the Chicanos, they're definitely a lot more open to it and like accepting. But the older,
aunts,
aunts, uncles, they're not, definitely not.
Do you think that this stems from like the religious part of it?
Definitely.
I get the same attitude in my family. I wrote an essay about that a while ago. Well, an article about it. Well, in my sense, do you feel like, I feel like the reason why it's real, homophobic is prevalent in the black community is because, how do I say this? Of course, you know, church ties.